Dan Scully again today, back once again with another episode of Warhammer Thoughty K. And in today's video, I'm going to be asking the question, is the current rate of releases from GW tarnishing their reputation? Stay tuned to find out more. So guys, the question is GW's current rate of release tarnishing their reputation somewhat? Release of 8th edition 40k, GW have had to come up with new rules for all of the units in the game. Now that's because they've introduced new stats. So they've got a movement stat, and they've changed the way saving throws work, or they've changed the way to wound works on a weapon and to hit works for each thing. So rather than have tables in the rulebook, each unit gets the stat in its own profile. So they're having to rewrite rules for every single unit in the game. Now, I've no idea how many units there are in the game, but there's an awful lot. So, what they did, they came up with these indices, which has, well, there's 4 factions in one. There's Eldar, Dark Eldar, Necrons, Harlequins, and I suppose Eldari as well. So there's like 5 factions in one of them, but then it's anything up to, let's say, 10 or 12 factions in some of the other ones in these indexes or indices. And that's like just a stopgap to make sure everybody can play the game straight away. Now, what they've said is they're going to have, I think, 10 codices out by Christmas. And for them to do this, they've got to basically get 2-3 codices out per month, something like that. So we've just had the release this week of the Chaos Codex and the Grey Knights Codex. We've had the Space Marine Codex already. Next one, I think, is the Death Guard. So that'll be 4 out of the way. And then they've got the rules for match play and stuff like that in, what's it called now, Chapter Approved, that's going to be out by Christmas, I think, as well. So the release pace at the minute for rules and everything, and for literature from GW, it's massive. They're pumping it out. It's coming out nice and quick and everything. And the way they're working at the minute is they're getting the rules out there, and then they're seeing what people think of it. They're seeing what occurs at tournaments, and then they're addressing after that anything that perhaps their playtesters are feeding back to them. So, you know, the people from Frontline Gaming and whoever else may be playtesters, they're feeding GW information saying, yeah, like Brimstone Horrors, they're being spammed, they're too cheap, whatever, maybe you want to change something to do with them. And then GW are then addressing issues with FAQs and erratas just a couple of weeks after the codex has been released, or after an index has been released. So that, for me, that means GW haven't thought properly about what might be used by gamers and by people who want to win tournaments. It's you know, that's I'm not. It's easy for me to sit here and say they should change because I'm not a tournament player. I have no interest really in going to a tournament. I may at some point in the future go to a tournament. I don't expect to be massively competitive if I do go to a tournament. But for tournament players out there, these rules do need to be addressed. These things that are going wrong, which means like the flyer spam we were seeing, or they were seeing at some tournaments, where people, I think, had 5 or 6 Storm Ravens and Rabute Gilliman, and that was it as their force. So now they've changed the rules so flyers can't capture objectives, and if you've not got any infantry on the table, they've added a rule called Boots on the Ground, where if you've not got any infantry on the table, then you are classed as being tabled. You've got no models on the table. So basically GW are addressing issues which they see after their codex or index has been released. But what they should be doing, in my opinion, is employ, I'd call it a breaker, employ a breaker who can look through these codexes or indexes and then tell them what's wrong with them. You know, what can be abused, if you like, and then taken to a tournament. put in a tournament list, and then it'll be ridiculously hard to kill. Like the Brimstone Horrors, you had so many of them on the table. I think it gives you certain psychic powers that were, they could cause a certain amount of mortal wounds per turn and stuff like that. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know there was an issue there. So then GW have come back and said, oh, Brimstone Horrors are more expensive now. So yeah, for me, it is tarnishing GW's reputation, because if I was making a game, I'd want to make sure it was right all of the time. Now the problem with this is for GW, there's that many different units out there, that many different rules. Obviously, there's going to be stuff that slips through the net. There's going to be rules out there that sort of combine, that stack with each other, that make a certain unit or a certain combination of units particularly difficult to deal with. So this is why I think they should employ at least one person to just, rather than be involved in the rules writing, what this person should do is just read through the rules, come up with combinations in the head. There's enough tournament players out there, competitive tournament players that win tournament after tournament after tournament, to be able to employ one of them to come up with combinations and say, yeah, if you did this, this and this, if you put these 3 units in the same force, then it's going to be really hard. They're going to be able to do this. They're going to be able to wipe out however many units, because this is what they do, and then they take it to a tournament anyway. So for me, that should be done before the rules are released. Now, obviously, GW, the rules are being written quite far in advance. So that's why maybe it's difficult to do something like that. So the codices we're seeing released now, they were probably written a couple of months ago before this edition of Thoughty K was actually released. So it is difficult to do something like that. But like when you're building a house, you have what they call a snagger. So the builder builds a house, and then I'm not sure who employs them, but I think it's the person who builds a house. They go around the house and they look for like cracks between a doorway and a wall, something like that. They look for where a bit of plastering has not been finished properly, and they go around the house. They pick out bits, and then they give a list of things that need fixing before that house is then purchased, or before the sale is complete and the people move into it. So yeah, that's what it's called in the building trade, a snagger. So that's all I'm asking for really, or all I'm suggesting is have a breaker, have someone who can come up with combinations, and then say, look, this is what needs fixing. Otherwise, people are going to abuse that. And for me, that should be done before the codices and the indices are released, or the indices are. I don't think there's going to be any more indices. It's all going to be codices going forward. So yeah, for me, it's a tricky situation because I'm of the impression, like I said, that the rules are written quite far in advance. The rules in the codices, they're written quite far in advance. So they're already on the back foot, GW. If they were to employ someone to do this for future codices, though, it may be helpful, because they released the Space Marine Codex, and then I think it was 2 weeks later there was an errata released to address certain things in the codex. It's like, well, you should, when you're writing a novel or something, or you're editing a newspaper, surely you have proofreaders, so you could get someone to basically proofread and snag at the same time, come up with combinations. There's enough people out there interested in this game that you'd think they could do that. Now, it's a monumental task what GW have undertaken in 8th edition. So I understand why there are things slipping through the net and combinations and stuff like that. That once the rules are out there, somebody's going to spot them, because once these rules are being developed by a handful of people, and then once the rules are put out into the public domain, everybody in the world could potentially get their hands on these rules, and then that's 6.5 or 7 billion people, however many there are in the world now, that have access, and therefore could potentially come up with a combination that somebody else hasn't spotted. So it may just be a case of numbers that makes it easy for people to spot it, and then they upload that to the internet, and then people start taking that to tournaments all around the world. So yeah, it's just an interesting little thought. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. do you think they should be getting the rules right before the rules are released? Because obviously, like I said, the rules have to be made in advance. The codices have to be written in advance, so they can get enough printed for the release date and stuff like that. At the minute, GW are struggling with production and stuff, so if they were to do it my way, they'd probably be even further behind on the codex releases, and committing to 10 codexes by Christmas maybe will hamper their reputation a little more. But of course, they are addressing the issues. It's just frustrating that the issues have to be found once the codex is already out there. You know, they've come a long way in the past couple of years in terms of addressing issues people have with the game, in terms of interacting with tournament organisers and stuff like that. So it's, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about it or anything, but it's just a thought I had. Does it damage their reputation to be releasing something that isn't really a complete product? So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.